The morning of my sister's wedding smelled like orchids and money. I carried a bouquet of white orchids, Mom's favorite, and pushed open the dressing suite door. Then I froze. There she was, Vanessa, spinning in front of the mirror like she'd stepped out of a magazine spread. Lace broke into soft waves around her. The train swept the floor like a secret whispered too loudly. The gown wasn't just beautiful, it was familiar. My throat went dry. "That's our mother's dress," she finished, admiring the mirror more than me. "It's perfect, isn't it?" I couldn't answer. That dress lived under my skin. Mom and I had spent 6 months restoring it in Carmen's heirloom studio before chemo made threading a needle an act of courage. Every stitch was ours. Every pearl held the memory of her steady hands guiding mine, the murmured, patient lessons that turned fabric into something like faith. Vanessa twirled again, laughter bouncing off the tile. "I had it taken in a little," she said, touching the neckline. "Mom said it was okay. My name is Lily Ortega, 30, owner of the same little tailoring shop my mother built from nothing in Coconut Grove. Mom taught me the patience of the needle, the rhythm of scissors, the quiet art of making what's broken beautiful again. Vanessa learned something else, how to make everything about her. She's 2 years younger, sells luxury condos, and walks like a camera is always watching. When Dad died in a tractor accident 14 years ago, Mom told me, "Take care of your sister. She doesn't have your strength." Mom never said what to do when your sister takes what was promised to you. "Mom said it was okay?" I asked. "When?" Vanessa adjusted an earring, performing thoughtfulness. "A few days before she passed. You must have been at the shop." "I wasn't," I said. "She didn't tell you?" Her tone dripped with pity. "Oh, Lily, she must have forgotten." "Don't take it personally," I almost laughed. Mom didn't forget. Even in her last week, when words moved like they weighed something, she whispered, "The dress will be yours when love is right, not when eyes are watching." Now it was twirling on the wrong sister for the wrong reasons. I set the orchids down before I crushed them. "You had no right." Vanessa turned, eyes bright and hard. "You got the shop. You got everything else. Why do you need the dress too?" "Because she gave it to me," I said. Her smile stuttered, then recovered. "It's just a dress, Lily. You always make things so dramatic." In my head, Mom's voice, warm, amused, unshakable. "You're the steady one, mija, the one who holds the seams." My gaze dropped to the hem, to the lace I'd mended one delicate thread at a time. That's when I saw it. Tiny initials near the edge, Carmen Ortega and Lily Ortega. Mom's last touch. Her signature in thread. "Did you notice this?" I asked softly. "What?" "The initials." I knelt, fingers hovering over the stitching. "She signed it for us." Vanessa tilted her head. "Oh, that?" I had them changed. I looked up. "You what?" "I took it to a seamstress," she said, smiling like generosity. "She replaced your initial with mine." Mom would have wanted it to match. The air thinned like stretched silk. Beyond the door, the quartet swelled, then faded, as if the music realized it wasn't welcome. "You altered Mom's signature," I said, each word a pin. "She wouldn't have cared," Vanessa said. "You always act like you own her memory." My chest hurt, the kind of pain that's both fresh and ancient. "No," I said. "I just remember them better." The makeup artist froze mid-brush, pretending to reorganize palettes that were already perfect. The room's hum went flat. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. "Don't be bitter, Lily," Vanessa said, turning back to the mirror, reapplying lip gloss she didn't need. "Just be happy for me." I picked up the orchids again, petals trembling against my wrist. Be happy. That was always the script. Smile for the photos. Absorb the slight. Offer the seam that holds the garment together while everyone else takes the bow. "Congratulations," I said, opening the door. "I'll be happy when you stop pretending to be someone Mom would be proud of." The door clicked shut behind me, trapping her perfume and laughter on the other side. My heels found the hallway's black and white marble rhythm. Sunlight shattered on the floor. The bouquet's stems left a wet, green scent in my hands, like something living trying to breathe. I walked past gilt frames and orchids in crystal vases, past guests rehearsing their kindness for the camera. My reflection slid over a window. Calm face, steady spine, eyes I recognized from Mom's mirror on the days she faced the worst and still picked up a needle. This wasn't jealousy. It wasn't a simple heartbreak. It was arithmetic, a running total of tiny thefts that added up to a bigger lie. that love is a thing you can alter, swap initials on, and still expect to fit. I stopped at a side table where a guest book waited, blank lines gleaming. A pen lay beside it, gold and heavy. I picked it up, the weight of it precise, familiar. Proof matters. Signatures matter. The things we stitch into cloth, the names, the dates, carry more truth than the speeches afterward. I set the bouquet down and pulled my phone from my clutch. Photos, dates. The restoration log Mom and I kept. Measurements, fabric codes, thread counts. Everything with timestamps. Images of the hem, the exact placement of Carmen Ortega and Lily Ortega. The last photo we took together in the studio, her hand cupped around the needle, my fingers steadying the lace. Numbers don't lie, people do. I sent the entire folder to myself, to the studio archive, to the lawyer who handled Mom's will when she was too tired to. Then I forwarded 2 images to Vanessa with a single line. This was never yours to change. The string quartet slipped into another song, brighter, faster, like celebration trying to outrun truth. I lifted the orchids and started down the hall toward the courtyard where everyone would gather, where cameras waited for a story that glittered. They'd get one. Because Vanessa didn't just steal a dress. She tried to edit a signature and call it love. She tried to cut my initials from our mother's last work and stitch on her own, like a mirror could bless it. I'm the steady one, the one who holds the seams. And today, I was done holding the wrong ones together. Vanessa saw me in the mirror and smiled, that perfect realtor's grin that could sell anything, even a lie. Don't look so shocked, Lily, she said, smoothing the lace over her hips. Mom said it was fine. The words hit harder than they should have. Mom was standing by the window, the morning light cutting across her face, a tube of lipstick trembling slightly in her hand. She fixed her mouth but not her expression. She didn't look at me, not once. It wasn't just the dress that made the room feel smaller, it was her silence. Some betrayals wear silk and call themselves family. Take it off, I said quietly. The words came out steady, but my heart was hammering so loud I could hear it echo in my ribs. Vanessa turned, eyes glinting. You're serious? Yes. She laughed at that sharp, brittle sound she used when she thought she was untouchable. You always think everything belongs to you, Lily. The shop, the memories, now this. It was mine, I said. You knew that. Her veil shimmered as she adjusted it, pearls catching the sunlight. You're being ridiculous, Mom said. Mom didn't say that. For a second, I thought Mom would correct her, that she'd speak up and set everything right the way she always used to when we were kids. But she didn't. She capped her lipstick, set it down with shaking fingers, and turned to me with a tired sigh. Oh, Lily, she said, her voice soft but cutting. Stop. It's just a dress. You're making a scene. The room tilted. It wasn't the words. It was the tone. Disappointment, not in Vanessa for taking what wasn't hers, but in me for noticing. The bridesmaids, all polished and perfect in blush satin, froze mid-whisper. Then, like a school of fish sensing weakness, they giggled that cruel, practiced laughter meant to keep hierarchy intact. The bride, the mother, the sister who didn't know her place. I turned toward Mom, desperate for something, anything, that resembled the woman who'd raised me. You told me, she cut me off, still not meeting my eyes. I told you to take care of your sister. My throat closed, and she took care of herself. Vanessa rolled her eyes. Please, Lily, don't ruin this day because you can't handle not being the center of it. That did it. My vision blurred not from anger, but from disbelief that the people who were supposed to be my home had become strangers in designer shoes. I could have stayed. I could have argued until the makeup artist dropped her brush and Mom's voice broke from pretending she wasn't ashamed, but I didn't. I did what I always do when words won't work. I left. The door clicked behind me, muffling the laughter inside. The hallway outside was cool and quiet, smelling faintly of lilies and champagne. I pressed my back to the wall and tried to breathe. The tears came slow, unwillingly, like the body's final act of surrender. I wiped my face with the edge of my sleeve and stared at my reflection in a gold-framed mirror across the hall. My eyes were red, my lipstick smudged. I looked like someone mourning something invisible, not a dress, but the line between family and fraud. Through the door, I heard Vanessa's voice again, light and triumphant. Mom, zip me up, followed by laughter. The sound scraped against me like sandpaper. For years, I'd been the steady one, the dependable one, the quiet half of a family that thrived on noise. I'd fixed Mom's dresses, balanced her accounts, and handled Vanessa's crises when she cried about money or men. But now, standing alone in the hallway, I realized something simple and terrifying. They didn't need me to hold them together anymore. They needed me to be the thread they could pull when things got too tight. The orchids I'd brought hung limp in my hands. I looked down at them, at the petals already bruising, and suddenly it felt like the most fitting metaphor in the world. Beauty in the wrong hands never lasts. I straightened, lifted my chin, and walked toward the elevator. I didn't look back. When the doors slid shut, the reflection staring back at me wasn't the quiet sister anymore. It was someone ready to unravel the story Vanessa had stolen one truth at a time. Because some things you can't reclaim with forgiveness. You take them back with proof. They say love isn't measured in numbers, but in my family, it always came with receipts. I could tell you the cost of affection, the way an accountant tallies loss, every figure neatly recorded, every omission a kind of wound you learn to live with. I learned 3 times where Mom's love went and how much it cost. The quince budget. I was 15 when I first understood the currency of attention. For Vanessa's quinceañera, Mom spent $3,500 on a custom gown, hand-beaded bodice, cathedral skirt, the kind of dress that made strangers gasp when she twirled. She booked a ballroom for $1,200, hired a photographer, and ordered a 3-tier cake so heavy it needed its own table. Vanessa glowed under the chandelier, spinning through clouds of pink chiffon. Mom clapped the loudest, her camera flashing through the entire dance. I remember thinking how beautiful they looked together, mother and daughter reflected in the shine of a celebration that had no room for anyone else. 2 years later, it was my turn. Mom said gently, "We'll keep it simple, mija. No ballroom, no custom dress, just an off-the-rack gown for $120 that she fixed in the studio one night after work. The hem was uneven, the zipper stiff, but she smiled like she'd given me the world. We strung fairy lights in the backyard, served pastelitos from the bakery, and played salsa from a portable speaker that crackled when the bass hit. I smiled in every photo. Because that's what you do when love comes in smaller doses. You make it stretch. You pretend it's enough. That night, as I scraped confetti from the grass, I understood something simple and brutal. In our house, love wasn't equal. It was assigned a value, and mine came at a discount. The career money. At 22, I'd been apprenticing under Mom for 4 years, saving every tip from alteration work at Carmen's heirloom studio. When I finally sat across from her one evening, heart pounding, I said, "Mom, if you co-sign for a small equipment loan of $1,800, I can buy a commercial machine. It'll double my output. I can start my own boutique." She didn't even look up from her fabric. "Not safe, Lily. Sewing is steady, but business isn't." I nodded, hiding the disappointment behind a polite smile. I should have known better than to expect risk from a woman who stitched everything tight. 2 months later, I overheard her on the phone, laughing that bright, full laugh she rarely used with me. "Of course, Vanessa," she said. "I'll cover it. It's an investment." That night, I found out she'd written a check for $2,250 to pay for Vanessa's real estate courses and exam fees. An investment. For me, ambition was recklessness. For Vanessa, it was potential. I wrote that number 2,250 on a sticky note and taped it inside my wallet. Not out of spite, but to remind myself that love, in our house, came with terms and conditions. When I finally opened my own boutique 2 years later without Mom's signature, she stopped by on opening day, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You did it," she said, "but you'll see. It's harder than it looks." She wasn't wrong, but I was still standing, the cars and keys Vanessa called first, crying tears of joy. "I closed my first condo sale," she squealed over the phone. I congratulated her honestly. I wanted her to succeed. 2 days later, she showed up at the shop, jangling keys to a new sedan. "Mom helped with the down payment," she said, smiling. $9 grand. Can you believe it? I could. 3 months later, my old Honda died on the way home from a bridal fitting. The engine coughed its last breath right at the stoplight on Douglas Road. I called Mom that night, voice soft, embarrassed. I need $600 for a used part, I said, just until I finish the next order. She hesitated. Be practical, Lily. Take the bus for a while, so I did. For 3 months, I walked to work under the Miami sun, shoes scuffed, backpack heavy with fabric swatches and hope. Clients came and went, and no one knew how far I walked to mend their luxury. When I finally replaced the car myself, cash paid in full, I didn't tell her. Some victories aren't meant to be shared. Looking back now, I can count the moments where Mom's love skipped me like a rock on water. I used to think she favored Vanessa because she was younger, flashier, more fragile. But now I think she loved her the way some people love shiny things, not because they last, but because they catch the light. And me, I was the one who stayed when the lights went out. I learned to measure worth not in numbers, but in endurance. Still, sometimes, when I balance my ledgers late at night, thread costs, fittings, payroll, I can't help but notice the arithmetic of it all. Mom spent nearly $14,000 building Vanessa's future. Mine cost bus fare and bruised feet. But that's the thing about love, you have to earn once you pay for it yourself. No one can take it away. I didn't stay for the ceremony. I told myself it was mercy, not bitterness, that watching from outside the chapel was less painful than pretending inside it. But as I stood in the garden, half hidden behind the jacaranda trees, I saw the stained glass spill light across the pews and caught a glimpse of Vanessa, glowing like a saint who'd borrowed someone else's halo. She floated down the aisle in Mom's lace gown, every stitch of my hands shimmering under the chandeliers. For a moment, it looked holy, sacred, but I knew better. She wasn't an angel. She was a thief in heaven, wearing my inheritance as if it had always been hers. Her groom, Daniel, smiled the way men smile when they think love is proof of character. I watched him reach for her hand, completely unaware that he was marrying the most beautiful liar in the room. The music swelled, the crowd rose, and for a heartbeat, I almost convinced myself to be happy for her. Almost. When the vows began, I slipped away. The sound of the organ faded behind me as I walked barefoot down Ocean Drive, heels dangling from one hand, bouquet from the other. The ocean was just a shimmer beyond the palms, endless and indifferent. I stood there breathing salt and grief, trying to figure out which burned more. That's when my phone buzzed. Mom, please don't ruin this day. You'll get over it. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't need to be shouted. It can arrive in a whisper, dressed as motherly advice. Something inside me shifted then, not like breaking, but hardening, like clay in a kiln. I didn't reply. 2 months passed. Life at Carmen's heirloom studio went on bridal fittings, fabric deliveries, the smell of starch and lavender filling every corner. I'd stopped bringing up the dress. The silence around it had become a family policy. Then one humid Thursday, I stopped by Mom's apartment at 1420 Biscayne Street to drop off groceries. She was hemming a curtain at the kitchen table, humming off-key. The living room was spotless the way she kept it when she didn't want questions. I opened the hall closet, half expecting to see the lace garment bag hanging there, the one I'd labeled for Lily Wedding 2025, but the hanger was empty. Where's the gown? I asked, turning. Mom didn't look up from her stitching. Vanessa sent it for cleaning. My heart stuttered. Where? She sighed, threading a new needle. Oh, I don't know, mija. Somewhere in Little Havana, I think. Don't start this again, I didn't argue. I just left the way people leave when they know the truth will taste worse if they hear it confirmed. By the next morning, I was parked outside Rosa Alvarez Antiques and Bridal, a boutique off Calle Ocho that specialized in historic preservation. The bell over the door chimed as I walked in. The shop smelled like old perfume and fresh betrayal. Buenos dias, the owner greeted me, her accent soft and familiar. She was in her 50s, silver hair twisted into a bun, reading glasses hanging from a chain. How can I help you? I'm looking for a vintage lace wedding gown, I said. Early 1970s design, hand-beaded. It might have come in for cleaning or consignment. She tilted her head. We get many. Do you have a photo? I showed her a picture of Mom wearing it on her wedding day, holding Dad's hand in front of St. Augustine's Church. The hem fluttered in the breeze, just like the one Vanessa twirled in at the Biltmore. Rosa studied the photo quietly. Then she exhaled through her nose and nodded toward the back office. Follow me. The air smelled faintly of starch and dust. She opened a folder on her desk, pulling out a printed receipt. Her eyes flicked up, cautious. I wondered when someone from the family would come. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? She slid the paper across the desk. Your sister came in a few weeks ago. Said it was hers to sell. I offered her a fair price of $12,000. There it was. Receipt 483 antique wedding gown, lace restoration piece. Sold to a private collector in Palm Beach. Seller, Vanessa Ortega. My pulse roared in my ears. $12,000. For Mom's love stitched by my hands. Can I have the buyer's name? I asked, voice tight. Rosa hesitated. Confidentiality, Senora, but... She paused, lowering her voice. If it were my mother's dress, I wouldn't let it go without a fight. I nodded slowly, my throat thick. Neither will I. I left the shop with the receipt clutched in my hand, the Miami heat pressing against my chest like a dare. Vanessa hadn't just stolen my dress. She'd stolen my mother's ghost and sold it to the highest bidder. I didn't confront her right away. Some battles deserve strategy, not shouting. Instead, I did what Mom had taught me to do when fabric tears measure, plan, and stitch it back together, quietly but with precision. The day after I saw the receipt, I called Rosa Alvarez. She answered on the second ring, her voice steady as thread. You've decided? She asked. I want it back, I said. But she doesn't know it's me. Rosa hesitated. It's already been sold. I'll pay more. There was a pause, the kind that feels like a moral test. Then she sighed softly. I'll call the collector. They're fond of stories. Maybe they'll understand this one. It took 10 days. 10 days of restless nights and guilt gnawing at my stomach like hunger. Then Rosa called again. The buyer agreed. $14,000, cash or cashier's check. They'll deliver it quietly. $14,000. The number sat heavy in my chest. 2 years' worth of sewing, saved for expanding the studio, gone in a single wire transfer. But some things you don't measure in profit. Some things you pay for with peace. I signed the check L. Sanchez, the name Rosa suggested, and waited. When the delivery van arrived 3 days later, the driver carried a long white garment box tied with gold ribbon. I opened it on the work table at Carmen's heirloom studio, hands trembling. The dress lay inside, immaculate pressed, folded, almost smug in its perfection. I ran my fingers over the lace, tracing the faint ridges of pearls and thread I had stitched years ago. It wasn't just fabric. It was proof that I could still reclaim what was taken. Rosa came by that afternoon, bringing empanadas and her calm, maternal presence. She's having a baby shower soon, yes? She asked. 3 weeks, I said. She smiled knowingly. Then that's your stage. I didn't respond. I just nodded, staring at the dress. The white lace shimmered in the light, soft, pure, deceptive. Exactly like the woman who'd stolen it. 3 weeks later, I walked into the Ritz-Carlton Key Biscayne, a place so polished it made your reflection look richer. The lobby smelled like orchids and money. The concierge barely glanced at me when I said, I'm here for the Ortega shower. The ballroom was a sugar-colored, dream-pink balloon, champagne towers, and a table stacked with designer gift bags. Vanessa stood at the center, radiant and expectant, her diamond ring catching every glimmer of light. I hadn't been invited, but I'd never been one for permission. When she spotted me, her mouth parted in surprise. Lily? She said, voice syrupy. Wow, you actually came. Of course, I said, setting the large white box on the gift table. Wouldn't miss it, her friends whispered, eyes flicking between us, the polished socialite, and the sister who smelled faintly of starch and thread. I smiled politely. Open it now. It's from Mom and me. Her brows lifted. You brought a gift? Something old, I said. Something borrowed. Something returned. The crowd leaned in as she untied the ribbon. Her manicured fingers peeled back the lid, tissue paper whispering as it fell away. Then came the gasp, soft, sharp, unmistakable. There it was, the wedding gown, folded perfectly, every pearl gleaming. Her face was drained of color. The chatter around the room faltered to silence. Even the string quartet hesitated mid-song. What? She started, her voice barely a whisper. There's a note, I said. Pinned to the bodice was a small card, written in my handwriting but signed in Mom's name, Carmen Ortega, just like the labels she used to sew into every finished garment. Vanessa's fingers trembled as she pulled it free. Her lips moved as she read the words. Some heirlooms return home when they remember who loved them first. A flush rose to her cheeks. Anger, embarrassment, guilt. I couldn't tell which. She looked up at me, eyes wet and bright. Let's just say, I interrupted softly, it cost about $14,000 to remind you that not everything's for sale. Her mouth opened, then closed. Around us, the guests shifted uncomfortably, sensing that something holy had just been broken or maybe mended. She tried to laugh, but it came out thin. You really couldn't just let it go, could you? I met her gaze. I did let it go. Then you sold it. For a long moment, we just stood there, two daughters of the same woman, staring at the proof of everything that had divided us, one who'd inherited beauty and one who'd inherited backbone. Finally, she set the note back inside the box, closed the lid, and whispered, "You always have to win, don't you?" I smiled, though it didn't reach my eyes. "No," I said quietly, "I just like Linz." And then I walked away, leaving her standing among her pastel balloons in perfect life, clutching the box like it might burn her fingers. Rosa was right. Revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it walks into a ballroom in sensible heels, leaves a white box on the table, and lets the silence do the rest. "Congratulations on your new baby," I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut through the pink fog of the Ritz-Carlton ballroom. "You'll need integrity more than a dress." For a moment, time froze. The clinking glasses stopped. The string quartet faltered mid-note. A room full of women in silk and pearls went still as mannequins. Then came the whispers, soft and nervous, like pins falling on tile. Vanessa's smile wavered, her hand still resting on the open box. The dress glowed under the chandelier light, white and merciless. She tried to laugh, but her voice cracked. "Lily," she said, "you've really lost it." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was sitting right there in front of her, folded neatly between tissue paper and pride. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered, "Is that her wedding dress?" Another voice murmured, "She sold it?" The air thickened with judgment. Vanessa's friends glanced at her diamond ring, her new car keys glittering beside the cake knife symbols of a life she'd built on borrowed things. The silence stretched until even she couldn't bear it anymore. She slammed the lid shut, forcing a brittle laugh. "Let's not make a scene," she said, eyes darting. "It's just a misunderstanding." But everyone in that room already knew. Misunderstandings don't come with receipts. I turned and walked away before she could find the words to spin it. The floor beneath my heels felt solid, finally. That night, my phone rang. I knew who it was before I answered. "Lily," Mom said, her voice low and shaking. "How could you humiliate your sister like that?" I took a slow breath, leaning against the kitchen counter of my studio apartment, the phone hot against my ear. "I didn't humiliate her," I said evenly. "I returned what she sold. You embarrassed her in front of her friends, her husband. She embarrassed herself when she put a price tag on family." There was silence on the other end, the kind that used to end arguments when I was younger, but I wasn't a child anymore. Mom finally sighed. The sound of defeat, or maybe recognition? "You could have handled it differently." "No," I said. "I handled it the only way she understands in public, with proof." The line went quiet. Then came the soft click of disapproval. I stared at the phone, remembering the woman who once told me, "Always measure twice before you cut." Mom used to mean fabric. I wondered if she ever realized I'd start applying that lesson to people. Vanessa blocked me the next day. Phone, social media, everything. She scrubbed the photos from her shower, unfollowed mutual friends, and posted a new quote to her Instagram story. "Some people only feel tall when they're standing on your mistakes." I almost laughed, but I didn't need to say anything. Truth has a way of traveling, even when you don't give it directions. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number. "Is this Lily Ortega?" a man's voice asked. "Yes, this is Daniel." For a second, I didn't say anything. The last time I'd heard his voice, he'd been saying vows under stained glass. "I saw the photos," he said quietly, "the ones the collector posted online. They tagged your family name and said the gown had been sold twice." I swallowed. "I didn't ask them to." "I know," he said, "but it was the truth." There was a pause, heavy, honest. "You were right about her," he said finally. I closed my eyes. I didn't want to be. He let out a tired laugh. "Guess neither of us got what we wanted." When he hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at the half-finished gown draped across my sewing table. The hum of the city outside faded, replaced by the quiet buzz of fluorescent light and the soft rustle of fabric in my hands. By Christmas, they were separated. Mom told me through clenched teeth over the phone. "He moved out," she said, like it was my fault the truth had legs. I didn't celebrate. There was no satisfaction in watching something fall apart that should never have existed that way to begin with, but there was clarity. The gown, now hanging in my studio window, glowed softly under the light restored, whole, and finally where it belonged. I'd placed it behind glass, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Love stitched in deceit always unravels, and as the carolers sang outside and the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and rain, I realized something simple and brutal hadn't ruined Vanessa's life. I just refused to let her ruin mine. It was a quiet Thursday afternoon when Mom walked into Carmen's heirloom studio, her reflection fractured across the glass door like a ghost unsure of its welcome. I'd been pinning a hem on a client's satin gown, the steady rhythm of my work grounding me in the peace I'd spent years earning. When the doorbell chimed, I looked up and froze. Her cheeks were streaked with mascara, her lipstick smudged as if she'd been arguing with herself before she ever got to me. In her hand was a small white box. "Mom?" I said carefully. "What's wrong?" She tried to speak, but her voice cracked like an old thread. "I made mistakes," she whispered. "So many." I gestured for her to sit, but she shook her head. "No, I need to say this standing." The late afternoon light filtered through the window, catching on dust motes and spools of gold thread. She looked smaller than I remembered, the kind of small that comes from carrying guilt longer than love. "I thought protecting her meant loving her more," she said finally. "Vanessa was always fragile, needy, and you, I was fine," I said softly. She nodded, eyes glassy. "You were strong, too strong. I thought you didn't need me, but strength doesn't mean you stop deserving fairness." The words hit like pins to the skin, sharp but relieving. For so long, I'd wanted her to admit it, not to apologize exactly, but to see the imbalance she'd built without realizing it. She placed the white box on the counter between us, her hands trembling. "I was cleaning out my sewing chest," she said. "Found this wrapped in a handkerchief. Thought it was gone. I lifted the lid slowly. Inside, nestled on velvet, was the original pearl clasp from the wedding dress, the one I'd replaced when restoring the gown years ago. It gleamed softly in the light, each pearl a tiny confession. "Keep it," Mom said. "It should have been yours all along." For a moment, neither of us spoke. I just stared at the clasp. A small thing, really, but it felt heavier than gold. Every stitch I'd ever sewn, every tear I'd hidden, every quiet act of endurance seemed to lead here, to this fragile symbol of something finally coming undone the right way. I reached across the counter, covering her hand with mine. "I never wanted the dress, Mom," I said quietly. "I just wanted to know you saw me." Her shoulders shook, and she laughed through tears. "I see you now, mija. I've been blind for too long. For the first time in years, I hugged her, not out of duty, not out of nostalgia, but out of something simple and real." Her arms were frail, bones pressing gently through the fabric of her cardigan, but the embrace held warmth that had been missing for too long. I still felt the dents, the old bruises of favoritism, of comparisons, of things said and unsaid, but they didn't cut as deep anymore. Time and truth had sanded their edges. When we finally pulled apart, she smiled, wiping her eyes. "You sound like your father when you talk now," she said. "He always believed in fairness." I smiled back. "Then maybe I inherited something good after all." She nodded, glancing around the boutique. "You've made this place beautiful, just like you made that gown beautiful again." I looked around the rolls of silk stacked neatly on the shelves, the faint hum of the old Singer machine, the dress forms standing like silent witnesses to a legacy finally at peace. "I just learned to work with what's left," I said. Mom chuckled softly. "That's what makes you an heirloom, Lily. Not what you inherit, what you preserve." After she left, I locked the door and sat alone at the counter, turning the clasp over in my palm. The pearls were cool, smooth, and familiar. I thought about the women who'd worn that dress, my mother, my sister, and how, in different ways, it had broken both of them. But I also thought about what it had built: resilience, self-respect, the quiet strength to hold your ground when love turns uneven. I took a length of blue ribbon from the drawer and threaded the clasp onto it, tying it around my wrist. It wasn't jewelry anymore. It was a reminder that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It reclaims it. When I looked up, the studio's mirror caught my reflection calm, steady, whole. For the first time, I didn't see the overlooked daughter or the wrong sister. I saw a woman who had learned the difference between being loved and being seen. The pearl clasp gleamed softly against my skin. It no longer belonged to the dress. It belonged to me. Today, the wedding dress hangs in my front window, encased beneath a glass dome at Carmen's heirloom studio. It's the first thing customers see when they step inside a gown that once represented betrayal, but now stands for something stronger: reclamation. The light through the front windows of Bayshore Drive hits the lace just right at 3 in the afternoon. The thread catches the sun, turning the ivory fabric golden, almost alive. People stop on the sidewalk all the time. Tourists, newlyweds, curious strangers pressing their faces to the glass to get a closer look. Some think it's a display piece for sale. Others whisper like it's a shrine. In a way, it is. A brass plaque sits just below the dome, engraved in Mom's looping handwriting. For every daughter told to stay quiet, stitch your own legacy. The words catch light the same way the pearls do, warm and steady. It took me months to decide what to do with the dress after buying it back and returning the clasp. For a while, it sat in a cedar chest in my office, folded neatly in silence, the air around it heavy with history. I'd open the lid sometimes, just to run my fingers over the fabric. Not out of anger anymore, but out of understanding. That gown had passed through too many hands, too many lies, too many kinds of love that hurt before healing. It didn't belong in a closet anymore. It deserved air, light, honesty. So one morning, I pulled it out, pressed it one last time, and built a display that felt like closure and resurrection all at once. Now, it stands in the window, not as a relic of a broken family, but as a promise. When brides come into the shop nervous, excited, full of dreams, they always stop at the display. I watch their faces soften when they read. Some of them tear up. Others smile knowingly, the way women do when they recognize a story too familiar to speak out loud. I never tell them the full history unless they ask. Sometimes I'll say, "It's a family heirloom," and leave it at that. Sometimes I'll tell them, "It's a reminder that even stitches can hold secrets." But mostly, I just let it speak for itself. Mom visits the shop every few weeks now. We sit by the window with café con leche and pastelitos, watching the sunlight turn the lace into gold. She always touches the glass, fingertips resting against the curve of the dome. "You did right by it," she says. "By us." Vanessa hasn't spoken to me since that Christmas, though she sends holiday cards signed only with her child's name, a small olive branch wrapped in politeness. I never send one back, but I keep hers in a box under the counter. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's knowing where to file things so they don't take up space. Sometimes, when the afternoon light slants across the counter, I catch a reflection in the glass of 3 figures overlapping: me, Mom, and the gown between us. It feels like a family portrait the universe corrected. The shop itself has grown in ways I never imagined. Brides bring their mothers now, sometimes their daughters, all looking for something with history. I teach classes on fabric restoration, just like Mom used to teach me. I tell my students that sewing isn't about perfection, it's about patience, and the courage to fix what others would throw away. Every so often, a young woman will pause at the display and ask softly, "Who was the dress made for?" I always smile. "Someone who thought it was hers," I say, "and someone who proved it was meant for her." They usually don't ask for more. They just nod, eyes wide with understanding. The lace glows brighter in the afternoons now. Maybe it's the Miami sun, or maybe it's what happens when something once stolen is finally restored to truth. Either way, I like to think that Mom's spirit lingers there, in every thread and pearl, no longer a ghost haunting a broken miss, but a quiet blessing stitched into the fabric of who I've been. And when I lock the door each evening and see the last ray of sun hit that dome, I whisper the same words that began this whole story. "We made it, Mom." The lace catches the light, and for a moment, it glows like forgiveness. And now, when teenage girls come in with others, I make the prices clear on the tag, not to scare them, but to teach them what no one ever taught me. Value can be measured in numbers, but worth is something else entirely. Each ivory tag hangs neatly from satin string, handwritten in black ink the way Mom used to write grocery lists. Careful, deliberate, proud. Hem and beadwork, $95 to $160. Full restoration, $650 to $1,200. Memory preserved. Priceless. That last line always makes people pause. Some smile, some get quiet, and a few, the ones who've inherited their mother's soft guilt and sharp love, tear up. I used to hate numbers. To me, they were reminders of everything Mom once measured unfairly. The $3,500 quince gown, the $9,000 car down payment, the endless calculations of who deserved more. But now, I use numbers as proof of something different: transparency, fairness, boundaries. When mothers bring in their daughters, I notice the same tension I once felt, a tug between pride and practicality. The moms run their hands over lace, whispering about cost. The daughters stare into mirrors, already dreaming. Sometimes I catch a girl glancing nervously at her mother, as if permission were the air she breathes. That's when I step in. I tell them how each stitch takes time, how restoring something old requires patience and trust. I let them hold swatches of vintage satin, explain the way fabric ages like people, softer, more fragile, but still capable of beauty if handled right. I tell them stories about Carmen Ortega, never Mom, just Carmen, the artisan. I say, she believed sewing was a kind of forgiveness, one small repair at a time. I don't mention the dress, or Vanessa, or the years that taught me more about the price of love than any ledger ever could, but I see it in their eyes. They know there's a story behind the plaque in the window. The girls ask, "What does memory preserved mean?" I smile. It means someone loved it enough to make it last. They usually nod, though they don't fully understand. They will one day when they grow into women who realize some heirlooms aren't inherited. They're earned. A few months ago, a mother and daughter came in close to closing time. The girl couldn't have been more than 16 shy, with nervous hands and eyes that wanted permission to dream big. The mother spoke quickly, scanning price tags, murmuring numbers under her breath. The girl whispered, "It's beautiful," touching a vintage lace bodice displayed near the counter. Her mother frowned. "That one's expensive." I caught the girl's reflection in the mirror, disappointment mixed with resignation. I knew that look. I've worn it too many times. So I smiled gently and said, "You have good taste. That lace is over 80 years old. It's rare." Her mother hesitated, eyes softening. "Rare?" "Very," I said. "And it's held up beautifully because someone took care of it. When something's loved properly, it doesn't lose value, it gains it." The mother looked at her daughter differently then, like she suddenly saw the point wasn't the price, but the care. She nodded slowly. "Maybe we can make it work." As they left, the girl turned and said, "Thank you." Her gratitude hit me harder than it should have. Maybe because, for once, I got to be the woman I needed when I was her age. Someone who saw value without comparing it to anyone else's. When I close the shop at night, I turn the tags so they face inward, like a secret between me and them. The moonlight catches on the dress in the window, glowing softly beneath its glass dome. The air smells faintly of lavender and starch, the same scent that used to fill Mom's hands. Sometimes I wonder if she'd approve of what I've built. Then I remember the day she gave me the pearl clasp, the way her voice cracked when she said, "You were strong, so I thought you didn't need me." I think she'd be proud not because of the business, but because I finally learned how to name my worth without asking for permission. The numbers on the tags are honest, the memories behind them even more so. And that last line, "memory preserved," priceless, isn't just for my customers. It's for me, for the girl who once measured her value by who got more, for the woman who rebuilt her name, one stitch at a time, and for every daughter who walks through that door, afraid her dreams cost too much. They'll see the plaque in the window, the gown glowing softly beneath the glass, and maybe, just maybe, they'll understand. You can't put a price on the things you fight to keep shining. Family can stain what's sacred. Money can measure the stain, but truth like silk never loses its shine. Those were the words I etched on the last page of my order ledger, in the same looping script Mom used to write, "Paid in full." I didn't mean it to sound poetic. I meant it as a reminder that even the most delicate fabric can survive a tear if you handle it right. Every day, I see the proof. Morning light slips through the studio windows, washing over bolts of lace, rows of thread, and the glass dome that holds Mom's wedding gown, the one that started everything. The plaque beneath it still gleams. For every daughter told to stay quiet, stitch your own legacy. People walk by and slow down to read it. Some press a hand against the glass, others take photos. No one sees the years stitched between those threads, the resentment, the forgiveness, the quiet reclamation of something almost lost. But I do, every time. Sometimes, when I'm hemming a dress, I think about how easily beauty hides pain. A clean seam can mask 1,000 mistakes. A perfect hem can cover uneven fabric. Family's a lot like that. Mom visits often now, hair silvered, her eyes softer than they used to be. She doesn't try to fix the past anymore. She just helps me pin bodices and tells clients stories about the old studio on 8th Street where it all began. One afternoon, while she was threading a needle, she said, "You know, when I first opened this lace, I thought making things beautiful was the goal. Now I think it's just about keeping things honest." I smiled. "Same thing, really." She laughed, shaking her head. "Not always. Vanessa still hasn't spoken to me directly. She sends photos of her baby through Mom, a quiet truce wrapped in snapshots of chubby cheeks and first steps. I don't hate her anymore. Hate takes too much maintenance. I just hope she's learning the lesson I finally did, that nothing worth keeping comes from taking. Sometimes I wonder what she'd say if she walked into the studio now, saw the dress under glass, the light hitting the lace like forgiveness. Maybe she'd recognize it. Maybe she'd finally see what we both missed, that the gown was never just about ownership. It was about memory, and the way it holds you accountable long after the applause fades. On quieter evenings, I stay late after closing. The hum of the sewing machine becomes a lullaby, the rhythm steady and grounding. The dress glows faintly in the corner, and for a moment I swear I can feel Mom's presence and Grandma's too. All the women whose hands made things last when life tried to pull them apart. I run my fingers over the fabrics stacked neatly on the table. Satin, chiffon, silk, each one a different kind of truth. Satin, for the parts that reflect light easily. Chiffon, for the fragile things that still hold shape. Silk, for the strength that never dulls, no matter how many times it's worn. Truth, I've learned, is like silk. You can twist it, stretch it, try to hide its flaws, but even after all that, it shines. Maybe that's why it scared everyone so much. Truth exposes what love can't excuse. If you liked my story, let me know in the comments, and also tell me which city you're watching from. Let's talk there. If you want to support me, send a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories for you. Thank you so much for your love and support. I'll be waiting to read your comments. There's much more on my channel, so don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.